Well, greetings all. Joseph Kursky here from Esri. I'm on the education team. More about that in a moment. But I'm so glad you're here with us for the SCGIS 2023 conference. I love the SCGIS community, and I'm sure you do too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. But it's a great group of people all sharing and learning and making the world a better place, right? That's what it's all about. Today, our task is to grapple with this topic in a short amount of time. So I know many of you are instructors. From your feedback that you've given me over the last few days in that poll that I sent out. So you know what a challenge it is to pack into 2 hours some of the core essentials to allow us to navigate our way forward in these rapidly evolving sets of tools. But it's a noble goal, and I think we're going to achieve it. I know we're going to achieve it. Comparing two field data gathering tools, Field Maps and ArcGIS Survey 123, with, at no extra charge, a little bit of QuickCapture, because I think it merits comparison to the other two since it's part of that set of field data gathering apps. Okay, so let's just get into it. Greetings and welcome. So glad you're here. A little bit about me, not to bore you to tears, folks, but I know many of you, and I've been supporting the SCGIS community for many years, face-to-face and also virtually. I'm so glad that we're getting together this year. My past is basically in 4 different sectors of society. I've been very blessed to be in nonprofit organizations, for example, president of the National Council for Geographic Education. I love geography education and all sorts of education. And that's why I'm thrilled to be here as well. But also I, like many of you, serve as instructor in an adjunct role at several different universities that you can see right there. I also have a full-time job at Esri on the education team. That is the team that supports schools, libraries, museums, tribal colleges, technical colleges, community colleges, and universities. And the reason why I mention that is because if you have an alma mater, if you have kids, if you know people with kids, if you are interested in, hey, spreading spatial literacy and geotechnologies into a university or college or school that you're really passionate about, please connect with me. That's what we're here for. We actually have real people on the team. This isn't some bot saying, hey, are you interested in education? It's a real team with real people, and we've been doing this since 1992. So it's not like we woke up yesterday and said, we need to be working with educators and students and facility managers and others on campus. We actually have a team that's been doing this for 30 years now, 30 plus years. So very honored to be a part of that team. And also I have a past in federal agencies, as you can see here, nonprofit, federal, government, and also academia and private industry here at Esri. My federal roles have been in these major science and geography mapping organizations, as you can see here. So very glad to be with all of you. The education program here, as I started to chat about ever so briefly, it is really these 3 things: enabling, encouraging, and equipping future decision makers to be spatial thinkers and to solve problems and to be the change agents of tomorrow, right, folks? That's what it's all about. There are many universities that are using these tools that we'll grapple with today, as well as other GIS tools. I think many of you know, but just to confirm that the software, ArcGIS, the platform, is free for schools and for universities, community, technical, and tribal colleges. It is very, very much reduced in price. So they get a severe discount because we want them to actually be using the tools. So it is for many things, actually, not just teaching and learning, but also for research and also for campus operations, making the campus more safe, more efficient, energy efficient, managing alumni networks, recruiting for the future. Today, our focus, as you know, is field operations. The goals for the workshop, we really have a big task, as I mentioned earlier, but understanding the capabilities of Field Maps, Survey 123, with a little bit of QuickCapture in there as well, and be able to determine which tool is best for your meeting specific needs, research, instruction, and others. And also to gain confidence. I want you to come out of here being more confident that you can use these tools in the future. However, since we have a slight pause there as I'm reflecting on the chat box, please use the chat box. If you've got something that you have a question about, please use that and communicate with me. I've got a plan here, of course, but I'm happy to interrupt as you see fit. I want to make this useful for you all y'all, ustedes, vous, tú, you all. Okay, so again, thanks for being here, and this is being recorded, so keep that in mind. I want to have this available for the people that weren't able to be here today, so that's why I'm recording it. I want you to gain confidence using these tools in the field. Now, this isn't just some old field picture that I picked at random. This is actually my photograph at Initial Point, Idaho. That's where all of Idaho was surveyed from. It's a nice volcanic plug just south of Nampa, sort of southeast of Boise, southwest of Boise. So it's a very geographically significant spot, and I thought that would be a good photograph for our field tools. Now, our outline, I've given some introductions. I know you filled out that survey. We'll touch on that in a bit because you used Survey 123 to fill out that survey. And I built a dashboard, as you may have seen in there as well. So we'll touch on that because that actually is very germane to our topic, especially with Survey 123. So we'll talk about your backgrounds as well. We'll talk about the field apps, of course. We'll have a discussion that at the end where if there's anything that comes to mind toward the end of the workshop that you feel needs to be raised, you certainly know how to get a hold of me. Just to do a search on my name, Joseph Kursky, and that should be here in my video feed, and you'll find me. Okay, I'm happy to chat with you in the future, and I learned so much from interacting with you all in the user community. So we'll talk about resources and where to go from here. I think you know that field tools are very important to your job, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But I always like to tell people, hey, field work is very important, not just for your organization, your government agency, your nonprofit, your private industry, your business, your academic setting, et cetera. But it's actually very important to the world and understanding the world and having empathy and resilience in that world. Richard Louv, L-O-U-V, authored one of my favorite books on field work, and that is called Last Child in the Woods, Richard Louv. It's all about getting young people onto the landscape, because then at some point they're going to be employees of yours in your organization. And Richard makes a important point that while adult constructed spaces are important, soccer fields, playgrounds, etc., they're not a sufficient substitute for getting people into riparian zones and vacant lots and trails and other natural landscapes. Okay, so why? Because they may understand the geospatial technology and they may understand the proper workflows in a certain agency, but they won't have the getting people out on the landscape is important, not just for their own mental and physical health, but for future wise decision-making in the workplace. So Richard Louv, Last Child in the Woods. So we're connecting people also with their own issues in their own communities. That's another, I think, important reason to get people out in the field collecting data, besides the things that you want them to collect, the water valves and the trees and the soil moisture and all the other things that you want to collect out in the field. Can you name this location? This is a geographically focused conference and workshop. So does anybody have a guess as to where this photograph is that I took out in the field? One of my all-time favorite places on the planet. And no, it's not in my home state here of Colorado, because we don't have a coastline, right? We're a landlocked state. So can you name, I know we've got an international community here, so that's a little hint. Okay, can you name this location? Anybody with a guess here? Just want to make sure that you folks are with me. Come on, folks, you're being too shy. It is kind of a caramel colored, okay, thanks for the input here. Lindsay, that's a good one, but it is not the Cape of Good Hope. No, I've been to Kenya twice and Tunisia once, but I've not actually been to South Africa. But this is the 12 Apostles Rocks in Victoria, Australia. Good on you, mates. She'll be right. Yeah, beautiful landscape. Oh, my goodness gracious. I'm sure you've got some favorite landscapes as well, you being the SCGIS community. Just to set our stage here, we've got several different interlocking components in this ArcGIS platform from Esri. Now, for those of you that are relatively new to this, and I know there are some folks that are new to this, think of most of the tools in the Environmental Systems Research Institute, or Esri, landscape for geospatial technology start with ArcGIS. And there's actually a sort of a geeky, nerdy story as to why it's called ArcGIS rather than just Esri GIS. And if you want some time, we can chat about that. But ArcGIS, most things are called that. That's our Esri brand of GIS, if you will. It's being used extensively throughout the world. Some of the components that are important to today's workshop is ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro is a desktop connected to the cloud installable piece of software with at least 1,800, if not more, spatial analytical tools, as well as tools for symbolizing, drawing, map projecting, and so much more. Okay. So ArcGIS Pro, think of the next evolutionary moment after ArcMap or ArcGIS Desktop, as it was also called. So ArcInfo, ArcMap, or ArcGIS Desktop, and then back around 2015, 2016 or so, ArcGIS Pro was actually designed from scratch. ArcMap was designed and built before the web. So the web was sort of tacked on. The SAS pieces were tacked on to ArcMap. So they worked, but ArcGIS Pro was actually designed with the web in mind. So ideally, you're actually signed into your ArcGIS Online account when you access ArcGIS Pro for additional capability and power, and also for sharing your content from ArcGIS Pro to ArcGIS Online and back as well. You can feed content from ArcGIS Online into ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Online itself, though, is a software as a service, fully operational GIS in the cloud. I know that the term is not really sufficient, in my opinion. It's called the map viewer. It's really more than a map viewer. It's a fully functional GIS with about 40 analytical capabilities versus 1,800 in ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Online has about 40 to 45 or so analytical capabilities. Mean center, standard deviational ellipse, map overlay, some spatial statistics, hotspot analysis, etc. It also has a 3D scene viewer, which a lot of people don't realize that it has. So ArcGIS Online. Also, ArcGIS Online has the capability of sharing through web mapping applications that we'll talk about. Instant apps, story maps, and others, okay? ArcGIS Enterprise, some people want to run something that looks like ArcGIS Online, but for various reasons. They're a university hospital, they're a tribal government, they're a caving organization, there's some national security organization, there's some compelling and valid reasons why they want to actually run it on their own premises. So that's ArcGIS Enterprise. And then there's apps, and we'll talk more about that. Apps are really opening up the world of GIS to the non-GIS community, which is exciting. We're getting a wider diversity of people in sociology, business, data science, and other disciplines saying, hey, we want to do some of this spatial analysis too. We don't want it just to be the environmental GIS, GI science, geography community. So that's what, to me, is one of the most exciting developments of geospatial technology. And indeed, the goal of my team, I mentioned our education team, is a deeper understanding of GIS throughout educational institutions and beyond. So GIS being a platform notion, not just I'm running software version X of version Y of software X. It's the whole platform, including the field tools that we're talking about today, and the spatial analytics, the mapping, the development of the web mapping applications to communicate your results. So all the way from collecting to communicating and everything in between. The apps are really opening up. So the deeper understanding of GIS, and on the wider understanding of GIS, that GIS is useful for business, for data science, for language arts, for health, for public safety, and for a wider, ever widening array of disciplines. That's really exciting to me and to my teammates, and hopefully to you too. Because then we're going to get input from people from all across, literally from architecture and agriculture and archaeology to zoology and everything in between. Then there's also this development zone where you can go in and look at the SDKs and the APIs and start actually digging into what's behind all of these web maps. That's all Python and JavaScript, for example. So for people that want to dig deeper and develop their own apps, not just the pre-configured apps on the right-hand side there, they can do that too. So that's pretty exciting. So these apps, as I mentioned, are bringing the power of location to everyone with dashboards. You've all seen the JHU COVID dashboard over the last 3 years, right? That was extremely useful, and for good reason. People checked in with it daily. Can I go to my public library? Do I need to wear a mask? What's my community say about this or that, et cetera? So through the JHU COVID dashboard, but many other dashboards about environment, about transportation, and other health variables, really started making people think of, oh, this thing that Joseph, that you're always talking about, is this a manifestation of that? These dashboards that I'm seeing? Yes, it is, as well as over 4 million story maps, which are another kind of apps that we see in that zone right there. So let's take a look at apps by theme. These apps aren't necessarily web mapping applications. They're also tools. I mean, think about Microsoft 365, folks. When you're using Word, it's an app, right? Inside 365, or PowerPoint. It's an app inside 365. So they're apps. And in the GIS world, you've got, this is one way of kind of conceptualizing it. You've got your Office apps. We do have something called Maps for Office 365, by the way. If you've got PowerPoint and you want to make some, or Excel, and you want to make a web map of your Excel spreadsheet and you want to do it right inside Office, there's an app for that. It's called Maps for Office 365, etc. ArcGIS Insights, just FYI, it's sort of like Tableau meets GIS. You can do some things in Insights that you can't do in any of our other tools. So it might be a good data visualization tool for you and or some colleagues that they don't have time to devote lots of hours to GIS, but they want to do a little bit with it because they have some data that they want to visualize spatially. So that's good to know. We've got some 3D tools in there, City Engine, ArcGIS Urban, and some other things. The ones that we're going to look at today are as follows in the field, right? The field apps, field maps in particular, and Survey 123. There's a reason why it's called Survey 123. We'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. There's also drone to map. You've got some drone or UAV data, and you want to bring that into a 2D or 3D map. We've got drone to map and also something called site scan. Drone to map being something that you run on a desktop computer, and site scan being something that's a SaaS-based, cloud-based system. Okay. Now, I just wanted to frame this that, okay, we've got some other ways of bringing in, there's lots of ways to bring in field data, not just with the tools that we're talking about today, but just so you think about, I don't actually have to have a survey to bring in my field data, field gathered data. What if I've got a whole folder of photos and they're geotagged, and maybe they have some attributes on them, maybe they don't, but I can actually drag all of that into ArcGIS Online as using the Photos with Locations tool. So that's one way of doing it. You also could have a GPX file from even a fitness app or a GPS receiver. You can make a map out of that data as well. You could have a CSV, a comma separated value, or text, plain old text file, or an Excel spreadsheet that you convert into a CSV. You can add that to ArcGIS Online, and then you can, once it's in ArcGIS Online, you could bring it into ArcGIS Pro for further analysis. You can use the tools that we're talking about today, Survey 123, Collector, or QuickCapture to collect data and then analyze it. You can use other field apps as well. I know that you, being the creative, wonderful SCGIS community, you're probably using a lot of other field tools as well. I've used iNaturalist, for example, in BioBlitz projects over the years. If you can get that exported into a table and it's got some sort of location information on it, you can definitely get it into a GIS package as well. So lots of other ways to get your data in. I'll also mention this. With ArcGIS Pro, there's something called the R bridge to the R statistics package. So if you've got some data in R and you want to map it, you can use the R bridge, R to ArcGIS Pro, and get it into ArcGIS Pro, and then even into ArcGIS Online from there. So, and you can also bring it back to R for further statistical analysis. So that's, I think, a really exciting development. Now, let's chat about field operations and data collection. With these tools, and I'm going to rearrange some windows here so that I can maintain some sanity, okay? There's a couple of things that I think are important to mention right here, and that is you want to manage your data out in the field. We did have some tools in the past called Navigator, Workforce. Many of those have actually been folded into ArcGIS field maps, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. You've got some choices to make when you decide which one of these three field maps, Survey 123, or QuickCapture you want to use. And like many tools, you're probably going to use a combination of these three in the future. You're not just going to say, okay, I'm firmly going to be using Survey 123 from here on out. No. Field maps, QuickCapture could be useful, and then conversely too. So that is just a little bit of an overview. And also, I'm giving short shrift to this, but as you folks well know, otherwise you wouldn't be in a field-based workshop like this. It is really important to do some good planning here before we actually go out and decide what tool we're going to use. You think carefully about, just like any worthy endeavor, right? You want to plan carefully about the units you're going to use, the equipment you're going to use, what you're going to sample, where you're going to sample it, if you've got a team, who's going to collect where, and all that sort of thing. I'm giving kind of, again, short attention to, but I truly believe, as a geographer and as an environmental person, a scientist, I truly believe in the adequate planning, right? Planning ahead of time, just like any noble endeavor, will save you lots of headaches, costs, time, and effort, and probably even safety in the long run. So spend time looking at some of the very excellent, essays, blogs, even books on how to rigorously and thoroughly collect field data. I'm going to show a couple of examples here, but before I do, I'm going to show this. I'm not sure. There's a lot of, urban myth type things that people associated quotes that may or may not have actually been authored by Einstein. But if I had an hour to solve a problem my life depended on it, I would use the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. Asking good questions and meaningful questions that can be translated into, okay, therefore, what do I want to collect? When, how, with whom, how often, etc. Right? That's really important. So whether or not this is Einstein's quote or not, I still like it because it gets us grounded, right, in the core basics. Now, I mentioned apps by theme before. What about QuickCapture? Here's a moment where I'm going to talk about this before I dig into field maps and Survey 123 more extensively. But over here, you probably noticed in the lower tier there, I was sharing, and hopefully you're seeing my sharing. And how's my audio, folks? How's my audio and my sharing? Is it okay? Someone give me a thumbs up or something like that. Thanks, Lindsay. Much appreciated. QuickCapture, as the name implies, is what we call a big button app. You get these big buttons on your device, your tablet, your phone, etc. So it's designed to quickly capture data in the field. So the name is actually quite a good one. Field maps, I'm not exactly wild about that name. It's sort of adequate, but it's a little bit mushy. It's a little bit indistinct. So, but that's okay. It's a very wonderful tool. But QuickCapture is actually quite a descriptive term. Think about use case A. I'm driving down the street, and sadly, we had a grim reminder of that this past week with the wildfires in Hawaii, didn't we? But what structure is, and hearts going out to the people affected by that. That's exactly why GIS is important, right, folks? We've got to build resilience into these communities. Oh my gosh. Okay. But, okay, what structure is burned? What structure is not burned? I'm on my motorcycle. I'm in an emergency vehicle. I don't have a field crew with me. It's just me, okay? I'm the first one on the scene. This is burned, this is not burned. There's a tree in the road, the tree is not in the road, etc. So I've got to collect it quickly. I don't have time to type a whole lot of anything. I just want buttons to be able to choose. That is what QuickCapture is all about, really. That's ideally what it is. Not necessarily while you're moving, but that was originally why it was designed. You don't have to be moving while you're using it. So let's talk about comparing the three field data collection apps right now. Survey one. Let me go in the order that I've got most of these the presentation. So that's field maps first. You're using a map. Your primary, although there's some blurring of the lines, as I'll talk about. Where we've got some form capabilities actually in with field maps. But setting that aside for the moment, primarily people are using field maps as a map interface. They're interacting with a map and the data that is associated with that map. So you're placing information on a map, your valves, your soil moisture, etc. Survey 123 actually came around a little bit later than field maps, or in its earlier form, it was called Collector, that probably many of you knew about. Actually, we have Collector, we had Navigator, we had Explorer. We had a bunch of different ones that we folded into field maps. Oh gosh, maybe around 2019-ish, 2020. So ever since then, those tools have been inside field maps. Survey 123 was designed actually at another, I mentioned the COVID health situation. Survey 123 came around in another health situation, and that was the Ebola crisis of 2014, where WHO and some other health organizations were on the ground in West Africa saying, these folks collecting data, many of them are volunteers. Many of them don't have GIS experience, and you Esri folks are too map centric. And we're like, well, of course, what's not to love about maps? We've always loved maps. And they're like, no, you don't get it. We need a form-based tool. So that's where Survey 123 was designed to be a form-based, collect data, analyze it, map it, make decisions on it. Hence the 123. So you're filling out a form in the field, interviews with people, a tree inventory, a water quality with several attributes, condition of the tree, let's say, height of the tree, species of the tree, is it impinging on power lines, etc. Does it need to be trimmed? Those kinds of things. Okay. QuickCapture, as I mentioned a moment ago, is you're by and large pressing a single or multiple buttons, though. You're very seldom filling out text. And as I mentioned, post-disaster assessments. Deciding factors, but let me talk about this before we go into deciding factors. This counting trees, this Austin tree survey, this is using field maps. So it's a very nice article. I'm going to put it in the chat box. I'm also going to share this whole set of slides with you all. But this is a very compelling, you all know this as the SCGIS community. There's lots of benefits for trees, right? Property values, sure, but also heat, right? Lowering the heat, especially when we've got blistering temperatures in many parts of the world right now. But this uses field maps. Lots of other benefits of trees, health benefits of trees, for sure. This one, so that's using field maps. The Sydney Light Rail study is using, as you can see here on the left side, Survey 123, where they've got to assess the condition of the infrastructure for the light rail lines. So I'm going to put that in the chat so you can see what some of these actually look like and some of the success stories. This last one here is QuickCapture for invasive species. So it doesn't have to be an emergency, but here we've got, oh gosh, knotweed. Okay, so they're looking at tracking invasive species, in this case, plant species. So that's using QuickCapture. So I selected those because I think they're very compelling. They're easy to digest and read, and you get a sense of what the value added. As an educator, and I'm sure you folks can relate, many of you are educators, and even if you're not, you can relate to this. You want to pick tools that are appropriate and not just because they exist. Yeah, we all want to learn more GIS. That's why we're part of the SCGIS community. But more importantly, we've got jobs to do, right? You've got constraints, staff, budget, time, and other constraints. You've got, family life outside of work as well, right? Work-life balance. You want to pick the most appropriate tools for the job. And so don't pick these just because they exist, although it is good to learn about, I think, all three of these, and hence the workshop today.